Why, hello folks. I'm gonna start this video series with a PSA that it contains heavy spoilers for The New War. If you have not yet played The New War, I recommend doing so before watching this video. Now let's get to it. With The New War, Digital Extremes have taken the narrative of Warframe into a new direction that's going to shape the overarching story for years to come. Namely, wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey weirdness. They did so with the introduction of a new character, sorta, called the Drifter, but also with the introduction of a philosophical concept of time called Eternalism. I'll start off by telling all of you that Eternalism is not some sort of sci-fi concept that Digital Extremes invented for this quest. No, Eternalism is a very real philosophical concept that has been argued and debated for most of the past century. When playing the quest, I'm sure there were parts of the narrative that you felt were disjointed, things that seemed to happen out of order, events that cut off abruptly, the sense that there were parts of the story that were skipped over. I posit that this was not by accident, nor was it because content was cut or anything else like that. No, I think it was intentional. And unfortunately, that's the inherent problem with doing stories based around time weirdness. They either don't hold up to scrutiny and introduce irreconcilable plot holes, like Avengers Endgame, or Heroes, if you remember that. Or they become so complex that you need to study a wiki with detailed graphs afterward to actually understand what happened, like the movie Primer, for example. The New War veers toward the latter example, through the introduction of the concept of Eternalism. So, what exactly is Eternalism? Like we were told by Eularia and Trati in the quest, who you know better as Mother, during the Zariman flashback sequence, the traditional way of thinking about time is called presentism. Presentism holds that only the present is real, and time moves forward in a linear direction. The past no longer exists. The future doesn't exist yet. Only the now is real. With such a way of understanding the universe, something like time travel would be impossible. There is no such thing as the past. It has stopped existing, so you can't go back to it. There is no such thing as the future. It doesn't exist yet, so you can't skip ahead of time to get there. But this all got muddled when Einstein showed up and introduced his theory of relativity as a concept in physics. To put it in the simplest terms possible, Einstein's theories redefined how we view the relationship between space and time. We now understand that space and time cannot be defined separately from each other, but are rather interwoven into a single continuum known as space-time. In this construct, space is made up of 3 dimensions, and time exists as a 4th dimension. They are intrinsically linked to one another. As a result, to an observer, time will move differently for different objects depending on how they move in space. Time is relative, not constant. Thus, in special relativity, there exists a thought experiment called the twin paradox, where you have 2 identical twins, and one of them makes a journey into space in a high-speed rocket, while the other one stays behind. When the first twin returns, he finds that the twin who remained on Earth has aged more. This seems paradoxical because they are observing each other. To each, the other one appears to be moving while they are standing still. So according to special relativity, both of them should have found the other to have aged less. I know, it's getting weird. And there are a number of ways of resolving this paradox, either by taking into account trajectories, or acceleration, or, interestingly enough, introducing a third observer. But I am getting ahead of myself here. Let's get back to the New War. Einstein's theory of relativity forces us to think about time differently than we have before, because the concept of relative time is incompatible with presentism. If time can move differently for different objects, then there is no such thing as absolute simultaneity. There is no such thing as a universal present. that applies equally for everything. You, watching this video, could be in the future relative to me, while you, who's also watching this video, could be in the past relative to me. Even if we're only talking by a microsecond, the implication of this is massive. It would mean that both the past and the future are real, just like the present is. That they exist, just like the present does. And this is the concept of eternalism. Eternalism can be explained through a model called the block universe, where all of existence can be shown as a three-dimensional block with 6 walls, containing the entirety of space-time as we know it. One of the walls represents the beginning of time, and the opposite wall represents the end of time. The present, as we understand it, is a single slice along this block, moving from the beginning of time toward the end of time. Where you are on this block is your present, both in space and in time. It is your here and now. But whatever is behind us, and whatever is in front of us, is just as real as the present is. In the case of the future, we simply haven't arrived there yet. But it exists just as the present does. In this way of viewing existence, time is a location. With this understanding of existence, time travel would indeed be possible. We would be able to go into the past or the future because they are real. But could we change anything? The future you, who is real, who exists, you would remember the past. You would know what happened in the past. So if I went into the past and did something that altered the course of history, then this would create a contradiction. The future you would now remember things that didn't happen. The future you might not even exist anymore. But that's not possible in the block universe, because that would imply that the future is variable, undefined, something that only exists in potential. Eternalism rejects that notion, because according to eternalism, the future is just as real as the past is. You can't alter the future by altering the past. What is in the past is what has always been in the past, shaping what the future has always been. If you went into the past and changed something, then this is what always happened. All you did was make things the way they are and the way they always have been. But that creates a new problem, one that eternalism has yet to provide a good answer for. What then of free will? If the future is real and is the way it is, and all we're doing in the present is journeying toward a future that will happen the way it will happen. If we cannot change the future because it's already real, then do we have a free will? Or is all of existence already predetermined? Eternalism does seem to necessitate such a fatalistic view of the world, so how do we reconcile such an unattractive thought with the idea that the future is in fact already real? One such notion is a somewhat crude theoretical construct called the growing block universe, which argues that only the past and the present is real, but not the future. The future has yet to come into existence until the present reaches there. In this notion of space-time, it would be possible only to go back in time, but not forward. This idea, however, doesn't seem to be compatible with Einstein's theory of special relativity. Another solution would be the idea of something like a multiverse, of branching timelines. But if we are creating new timelines through our choices, then we are constantly expanding the width of space-time, containing all of existence. This would also be incompatible with the idea of eternalism, because that would imply that a potential future didn't exist until I made a certain choice. Eternalism holds that the future is not merely an undefined potential, it is real, just as real as the present is. It has always been real. It has always existed. What must then be true is that a distinct reality already exists for every possible outcome of every choice ever made. Her parents will survive. Her parents will die. These are not just potential outcomes of her choice. No, both outcomes happened. Both futures are real, and they always were. But that brings up a very pertinent question. How does that manifest itself? Do these different realities coexist? Do they take up the same space in the continuum of space-time? The answer to those questions will be found in the void.